As like any subject in school, the standards are important, and it is also really important for us as educators to understand the standards and know how to use them and know what standards are in each grade level. Of course, it's never assumed or expected of you for you to memorize all the standards, but knowing how to read them and what standards how they were formed is something that you are expected to know. So let's dive into a quick review of the standards in social studies. Before we get going, of course, you can see on page 16, I believe, here's your graphic organizer for powerful goals. You can see at the top you have National Council for Social Studies. I want you to take your few notes there and give me an illustration. The 3C standards, give me a few notes and an illustration. And then your state standards, a few notes there and your illustration. And at the bottom, I want you to illustrate how they work together, okay? Are they arrows going into each other? Is there an umbrella with things underneath? Think of a visual letting me know that you comprehend how all of these things are linked together. So let's get started. For the National Council for the Social Studies, that is NCSS, this is a council. It's a national group of teachers, and what they really care about is the content of social studies and the pedagogical standards and how effective teachers are at teaching social studies. Their vision says that a world in which all students are educated and inspired for lifelong inquiry and informed civic action. You'll see that phrase through all of these organizations. Their big mission is to support educators, again, in making sure that their students are informed citizens. It started in 1921, and right now they're the largest professional association just devoted to social studies in the country. And they really serve as an umbrella organization for elementary teachers and high school teachers and college teachers of history and civics, geography, economics, political science, sociology, psychology, anthropology, law, related education. When I will go to an NCSS conference, all of these are included because, again, it has to deal with civic action in our students. Let's see here. The idea of social studies is an integrated study of humanities, and it to promote that civic competence. The primary purpose of social studies is to help young people develop the ability to make informed and reasoned decisions. And so when we talk about the classroom community, we can see that as just a real life classroom. They like to practice cultural diversity, democratic society, and an independent world, studying all of those. The standards were published in 2010, and they consist of 10 themes incorporating fields of study that correspond with more relevant disciplines. So inside of social studies, you are going to be able to see programs that include experiences and studies of culture, time, and that kind of breaks down into continual time and change over time, people, places, and environments, individual development and identity, individual groups and institutions, power, authority, and governance, production, distribution, and consumption. You can see some more government and civics themes in there. Science, technology, and society, global connections, and civic ideals and practices. Those are all interwoven in social studies, and so we really want to get away from the thinking that social studies is just history or it's just geography, because when social studies is taught right, it is so much more. In 2013, there was something published called the College Career and Civic Life, so the C3 framework for social studies state standards. There is a graphic for that. And the idea was that they were going to help social studies teachers in two ways. The first one was they were going to help states to upgrade their state social studies standards to make sure that they were expecting what they should out of the teachers and making sure the teachers had the resources that they needed. And then also for practitioners, local school districts, schools, teachers, and curriculum writers, C3 helps them strengthen their social studies program. And the goals of C3 was to enhance the rigor of social studies, to build critical thinking, problem solving, and participatory skills. And then lastly, to align academic programs to the Common Core state standards for English language arts and literacy. And you will see those, and we're going to talk about those all semester, but the idea of enhancing that rigor, making sure that it's not just a simple memorization subject where we give you a map and you memorize it, or you memorize the states and capitals, or you memorize the presidents. We want them to be able to understand and specifically really be able to think critically. And that can be done, social studies can be incorporated into language arts very easily. And so one of the C3 framework standards or goals is to partner language arts and social studies. The C3 framework, although you do not have to understand it completely, it is organized into 4 different dimensions. The first one is developing questions and planning inquiries. So if you think about that, I hear questions and inquiries. We're asking the students to think. Dimension 2 is applying disciplinary tools and concepts. Dimension 3, evaluating sources and using evidence. That's really important, and we'll talk about that later, about them being able to hear news and deciphering what's true and what's not, what they can trust, making those informed decisions. And then Dimension 4, communicating conclusions and taking informed action. Those are kind of the 4 dimensions, and they bounce those off of 5 different standards. The first one's content knowledge, and then application of content, and then the third one is design and implementation of instruction and assessment. Standard 4 is social studies, learners, and learning, and standard 5 is professional responsibility and informed action. So previously we had National Council for the Social Studies, NCSS, and the idea that they were going to make standards that were covering a bunch of different disciplines, that social studies just wasn't just one discipline. And then years later, in 2013, we have this college, career, and civic life. You can see where you got the 3 C's framework, and it is really pushing us as educators to make sure that we are asking tough questions of our kids and giving them experiences to help them think and help them learn on how to become a good citizen. So for the National Council for Social Studies, there is a quick minute 7 video about our role as advocates. And then there is also describing the 3 C standards, a video from Pearson, and it is a textbook publisher, but it really goes in how that particular publisher broke down the 3 C3 standards and how their textbooks are meeting those. And for me, it was just a really good way to show you guys another example of what those C3 standards look like in the classroom. That video is 6 minutes, but I want you to pause and go ahead and watch those 2 videos and then illustrate in your notebook, and then we'll come back to state standards. The state standards of Ohio, those are, of course, written by the Ohio Department of Education. They are a set of statewide common expectations. They are not Common Core standards, but they all, again, have a strand, themes, topics, and content statements. What I would like for you to do is go onto the Ohio Department of Education and look up the social studies standards. We'll talk about it a little bit more next week, but you can see that in each grade level we take on a certain theme, and inside that theme it is broken down into itself different strands, sub-themes, topics, and content statements. And so as we progress from kindergarten through 6th grade, our children are getting a very well-rounded whole education, again, to hit this civic competence. What I want you to do is on your very last box below, think about how does the NCSS standards relate to our 3C standards and then also our Ohio standards and what that means for you as an educator. Please make sure that you remember to fill out your graphic organizer, color it, snap a picture that's in focus, and upload it to Canvas for me.